Please join me in welcoming Chairman Brady.
John, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for your leadership of this policy forum. It's rare, as you said, to be able to bring thought leaders together at such a critical time in tax reform. And as you know, we have spent a considerable amount of time together as we've worked on how do we leapfrog our America and our tax code back into the lead pack as the most pro-growth tax codes on the planet. And it requires us to be bold at every step in order to do that. So before I get wound up, thank you, John, for having me here today. Thank you for the host, Georgetown Law's Institute of International Law, and of course the International Tax Policy Forum. And what you've done with this conference is just so impressive because of the bright minds that are in this room. And I think really it speaks directly to the outstanding work being done by today's sponsor organizations. More than that, I think it underscores the urgent need for leaders in Washington to take a hard look at where we stand globally and examine what we need to do to strengthen our international competitiveness. And I'd be remiss in not saying, while we're on the subject of bright minds, one of our bright minds on the Ways and Means Committee, Allison Halatai, our general counsel and parliamentarian, is a graduate of Georgetown Law. So we're glad. Allison, where are you at today? Here's Allie. Thank you for being here. She's going to critique my speech, so, you know, get a little nervous about that. So, look, I jump at the chance anytime, anywhere to talk about tax policy. And today, though, is an especially historic day to have this discussion. Today's the 104th anniversary of the ratification of the 16th Amendment, which formally established the federal income tax. So, can I get a cheer for that? No, you don't cheer for that. Man, I asked the wrong question. So, the 16th Amendment is simple, and it's amazing. It's just 30 words. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, without regard to any census or enumeration. It's amazing to think what has come about from those simple 30 words. From those words, we now have the highest corporate income tax rate in the developed world. From those 30 words, we now have a tax system that puts made-in-America products at a tax disadvantage both here in the United States and around the world. We have a tax code that favors foreign products over U.S. products and chases American jobs in manufacturing and research overseas. And from these 30 words, we now have a tax code that's so complicated that according to Tax Foundation, American businesses and families spend more than a combined 6 billion hours and $30 billion just to file their taxes each year. And from those 30 words, we can all understand what Will Rogers meant when he said the difference between death and taxes is death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets. So here's what I think when I read the 16th Amendment. Our tax system doesn't have to be this way. We do not have to settle for what we have today. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived. That means Congress and the American people have a choice in how our tax system works. We have control over it. And if we don't like our current tax system, those 30 words give us the power to change it and put in place a new one that strengthens America in opportunity and wages. Whatever we want it to do, we can make it simple or as complex as we want. We can make it as pro-growth or slow growth as we want. We can make it as globally competitive or uncompetitive as we want. And so when House Republicans began developing the blueprint last year, those three choices were at the heart of every decision that we made. We looked at the boldest, most innovative policy solutions available, and just as all you have today, we took a hard look at where America stands today relative to our international competition. One thing became clear: not only are we struggling to compete and win internationally, many policy areas, we're not even in the game. Our local businesses are fighting with one hand tied behind their back, and there is no reason to stand idly by and continue to allow the status quo to continue. So with our blueprint, we said, let's make the system simple. Let's make it pro-growth. Let's actually build a tax code not designed to wring money from you, but designed and built for growth, the growth of jobs, the growth of wages, the growth of the U.S. economy. And thanks to the hard work of the members of the House Republican Conference, the Ways and Means Committee, and we have 24 of the brightest tax minds in the House, and the leadership of our Speaker, Paul Ryan. We were able to pull this together and deliver, I think, propose the type of tax code our nation truly deserves today. Our blueprint delivers a tax code built specifically to leapfrog America from dead last among our global competitors back into the lead pack of the most pro-growth tax systems on earth. And we do that because we know what our competitors do. Just as every successful business, we know what our competitors do. So we start with providing the lowest tax rates in modern history for American businesses of all sizes. No longer will we be sitting on the sidelines with the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Instead, we're proposing a corporate rate of 20%, a rate that gets us in the game in a major way. For small businesses, for those who are not C corporations, no longer will you be taxed under the individual side of the code that can at times can be as high as 44.6%. Instead, our Main Street job creators will be taxed at a top rate of no more than 25%. So they can keep more of what they earn, not sending it to Washington, but reinvesting it in their business, in their jobs, in their future. This reduction in rates for pass-throughs is truly historic. Exercising the choice and the power the Constitution gives us, we decided that for the first time in history, we would finally separate wage income from small business income. We decided that it was finally time to stop taxing Tom's bike shop like we tax Tom Brady. That is not a prediction on this weekend in any way in the Super Bowl. I'm a big fan of his. But for decades now, we've not been able to separate the small business person from the high wage earner. As a result, Tom's bike shop paid more. We're determined to change that. And while lower rates will certainly get us back into the game, it's not enough. For us to stimulate growth, for us to leapfrog our way back into that lead pack, we have to do more. So that's why we also take historic steps to unleash investment in America. So for the first time in history, our blueprint provides all businesses with the ability to immediately write off the cost of new capital investment, unlimited. So instead of the complex depreciation rules we have today, there will be a tax-free return on purchases of new equipment, technology, or machinery that our job creators need to produce and compete at a higher level. And this policy, which is full and immediate expensing, is one of the most pro-growth solutions we have in the blueprint. Not only will it unleash business investment, and here's the key, it's not about buying just equipment or technologies or computers or building, it is about productivity and the investment it takes, because that drives wages, that drives growth in America. And that, by the way, that business investment and the productivity that goes with it is what's been missing from this recovery for the past 8 years. And finally, to ensure we leapfrog America back into that lead pack and keep us there, we're proposing to replace our worldwide tax system with the territorial tax approach and to end the Made in America tax on U.S. exports. So unlike our foreign competitors, almost all of our foreign competitors, the United States doesn't currently tax the sale of products based on where the sale takes place. Instead, we tax the sale of products based on whether those products are made in America or if the business making them is headquartered here, hence the Made in America tax. And this tax is one of the most antiquated, uncompetitive, anti-growth features of today's U.S. tax code. It puts our Made in America goods, services, and intellectual property at a direct tax advantage here at home and the same abroad. And worst of all, in my view, it provides a direct tax incentive for businesses to move their jobs, their investment, their research, and their headquarters outside the United States. And today, for too many businesses, the best place to access the U.S. market is from outside the U.S. market. And that can't continue. So for the first time in our nation's history, we're proposing to end this Made in America tax and completely rework the way we tax the sales of foreign imports in American-made exports. Our proposal is simple, and it's based on one powerful idea. All products consumed in America will be taxed at an equal rate, a low business tax rate of 20%. And this policy, sometimes referred and now becoming much more known to the mainstream as border adjustability, is how all our foreign competitors implement their VAT taxes. But unlike our foreign competitors, this is not a VAT. And unlike our current tax system, it's not an origin-based business income tax. As I explain in our town halls back home, and I do more than 50 a year, and most of them on tax reform these days, imagine the current tax code as a spotlight that covers the whole stage. But imagine when a spotlight narrows down to just one character on that stage. That's what we're proposing in our tax code. Take this complicated, bloated, uncompetitive international code and narrow it down to spotlight to the United States and ask that basic, powerful question: is your product, your service, your intellectual property consumed in the U.S.? If so, it will be taxed at a simple, low business rate. This is a smarter, a simpler destination-based cash flow tax that, as Alan Auerbach has designed and discussed and advanced throughout the years, is far more pro-growth for America. And with it, we will level the playing field finally. So no longer will foreign imports have an advantage over made in America products here in the United States. Instead, all products will be taxed equally. I can't think of anything fair than equal taxation. And additionally, no longer will made in America tax on U.S. exports our sales put our businesses and workers and products at a disadvantage overseas. So if your American-made product or service is sold abroad, it will no longer bear the U.S. tax, period. And in the end, this move to eliminate the Made in America tax is a simple but very powerful way to promote true competition based on price, quality, and service instead of tax regimes. And when combined with the other historic reforms of lower rates and full and immediate expensing, as well as territorial, it eliminates, and this is our goal, to eliminate every tax incentive to move your job and research overseas. In fact, to do the opposite, but to make America, again, a magnet for new business investment and growth in the 21st century. It is a game changer. And as simple as this solution is, taxing all products equally here in the United States, we also recognize that there will be questions and concerns. This is a major change from how we tax today, and while border adjustability may be well known among you and around the world, it is new to the United States. So we're listening carefully to those who are impacted. We're spending time discussing this with those who have questions. We welcome and expect that feedback. We work to improve this blueprint at every step in the process. So if there's anything you remember from today, it's this: if we have the power to make our tax system as bold, as pro-growth, and as competitive as we want, and we do, why in the world would we hang on to provisions that put our producers at a worldwide disadvantage and drive American business and jobs overseas? This is the one thing we can't afford to do. And today, we are closer to pro-growth, comprehensive tax reform than at any time in 30 years. And this moment may not come again. It may not come again. And as we move forward, I welcome your input, your feedback. We are open to the ideas that help drive America, again, into the lead pack for tax codes, that grow our economy and wages in a serious way, and that we continue to stay competitive in the future. So thank you again for having me. John, I'd be happy to take any questions the audience may have. You want to do that?
My question for the chairman? Well, I'll start out with one while people are generally not a very reticent crowd. Have you thought about how other countries in the world might react to this, and whether it's consistent with obligations we have with the WTO or other trade organizations?
Yes, we've certainly given a great deal of thought to that. I think talk of a trade war is silly. Frankly, what will they complain about? Stop copying us? Stop border adjusting your taxes as we do? We chose not to use a value-added tax for a number of reasons and go to this simpler cash flow system based on consumption in the United States. We think it's far more pro-growth, simpler to comply with, but it is economically equivalent to the value-added tax and the approach they use. I've been involved in 12 to 14 free trade agreements America has in place, and I'm confident that we will meet any challenge at the WTO because we're no longer merely adjusting an income tax. We are transforming ourselves to this cash flow tax based on consumption here, and we believe it meets the standards and the critique of the WTO. So, and also, too, I didn't see Kevin Hassett here earlier. Kevin, I want to thank you, as I did Alan, in bringing many of these bold, innovative ideas to our attention and continuing throughout the years to work with us to mold it. So thank you.
I have a question. I wanted to ask you about the lower rate you were proposing for small business pass-throughs income. And what was the thought there, that large pass-through businesses would be taxed still at the higher individual rate, or that they would be taxed as corporations?
Yeah, no, all non-C Corps will be taxed at that lower rate. And this challenge came about simply because, as you know, the two biggest changes since Reagan reforms occurred. One, fewer and fewer Americans are paying more and more of the taxes. We know that on the individual level. While on the business side, fewer and fewer companies are organized as traditional C corporations. And so we wanted to make sure from a pro-growth standpoint that we were becoming competitive, not just on a part of the ledger, but the entire job creation network in the United States. So what we knew from the past efforts and to acknowledge the contributions, the work that Dave Camp did as chairman here, the work that my predecessor Paul Ryan did as well, informed us throughout this, and what we had learned, that keeping it just tied to the individual rate makes it incredibly difficult and expensive to lower those rates enough to be competitive. And so that's why we took the approach of splitting out wage income from business income. We hope to do that in as simple way as possible with clarity going forward. But this discussion in that regard has actually helped as we've looked at other parts of the tax code.
Chairman Brady, thank you for being here, and thank you for the speech as well. I'm curious, you've had some issues with retailers and refiners, and I'm just kind of curious as to how you would address the issue with retailers and refiners.
Sure. Look, imports are equally important to our economy as exports, but no one deserves special or favored treatment in our tax code, especially compared to our competitors worldwide. First, I don't think anything works as well for consumers as true competition. That's how you get better quality and better prices and better service. Secondly, I'm convinced that as we move this direction, as has happened in the past, that currencies don't freeze. You know, the economy doesn't stop. That as we strengthen the U.S. economy, as we strengthen our exports, the dollar will strengthen. The result of that, ultimately, that imports, frankly, more of them are purchased with that dollar coming in. The trade balances will reestablish. But this isn't just an issue of trade flows. This is about job and investment flows. And there's no question what we are doing here with this redesign is to drive job and investment flows themselves into the United States. And so I'm confident that, one, because of the economy's competition, what we know how currencies adjust, and because we are listening carefully and exploring a number of ideas on both the design and the transition of this provision to accommodate some of the concerns, valid concerns. I'm convinced that we can accommodate those who are a bit of hysteria, not so much. But at the end of the day, our tax code is not going to favor U.S. or foreign products over ours. They'll be taxed equally. And by doing that, by bringing this spotlight down to the U.S. and consumption, we are going to eliminate every tax incentive to move those jobs and research and manufacturing overseas.
Mr. Chairman, if the value of the dollar doesn't go up by 25%, there's some concern that products are going to cost more money for consumers, TVs, clothes, for example.
Yeah.
Can you guarantee that that will not happen? And if it does happen, should consumers be ready for that?
Yeah, so, an obvious question is what happens to the 43% cut in business rates under that scenario, which obviously should be factored into that. Secondly, I am confident that our currency markets worldwide don't stop that day, that they continue to adjust with stronger exports and a stronger economy. And I'm confident as well, sort of as the safety net under that the design of the border adjustability and the transition of it can allay those concerns. And I'll still say at the end of the day, the surest path to lower prices and better quality and service is through competition. And that's what occurs in this.
Mr. Chairman, have you given consideration at all to, rather than a wholesale replacement of the corporate tax day one, to have some sort of, say, predictable phase-in or phase replacement of the corporate tax?
So those are part of the discussion. The answer is yes. That's part of the transition process, and we have actively engaged leaders in the refining, the import refining, the export refiners and others. The domestic producers are very excited about this blueprint. So yeah, we have asked leaders to engage with us on the design and the transition and phase-in of all of this. My view is their concerns about consumer impacts or tax impacts, we don't want those either. And so the design of this blueprint is to accelerate the growth, to address the transition of where we want to go. But at the end of the day, know exactly what we have to do, become competitive globally, means we cannot stay with the status quo we have today. Everyone needs to understand that. We are not going to continue a tax code that favors foreign products over U.S. products or keeps in place incentives for companies in research and manufacturing to leave the U.S. At the end of the day, that's not going to happen.
Mr. Chairman, are your counterparts in the Senate on the same page with you? Are you working together on this, or do you foresee, some challenges of reconciling different views?
It seems unusual that the Senate and the House might be on a different page. Here's the great news. I watched the work that Chairman Hatch and the Finance Committee has done, an awful lot of work over a number of years in areas on taxation to become competitive. I think that's incredibly helpful. Secondly, the Senate needs to develop their ideas on tax reform. And in the House blueprint, not only did we include the ideas of more than 50 lawmakers and a number of the best ideas from tax leaders in our country, but we included the solutions of nearly 23 to be exact, U.S. senators. My view is not only do we share the goals of simplicity and fairness and competitiveness, we actually share the solutions for those as well. So we start, I think, from a very good place. Because we're going very bold to leapfrog, we expect the kind of questions we're getting from lawmakers, from policy leaders, from the business community as well. So I think all this is very healthy. And at the end of the day, I think having this discussion now, early and intense, helps us meet our deadline of doing this in 2017. You know, if I were smart, I would filibuster all these questions, you know, and just keep going on and on. But we want to get as many as we can.
Hi, Chairman. Brian Chung, S&P Global. So I had a question about, in the similar vein, what I guess the alignment was with the White House on this particular topic. There was some talk that the president may not have been on board with the border adjustment tax, may have actually been supporting a tariff of some sort with certain countries. Can you elaborate a little bit more about how your committee is chatting and being on the same page with the White House?
So we started in a very good place in the sense that President Trump's tax reform plan was probably 80%, I think, was the common figure between that and the Republican plan. That's an excellent place to start from. So we've had a lot of good discussions with both Vice President Pence, and the Trump team on every provision in the blueprint. I see the common ground growing more and more each day. You know, I think publicly it is easy, perhaps, to look at tax and trade issues as the same, but in truth, in this case, from a tax standpoint, we're talking about making the changes that allow us not just to meet what our competitors are how they're treating us, but to go beyond that. And I think tax done right can also lay the groundwork for trade agreements done right as well. And so my short answer is these discussions are exactly where I hope they would be at this point and going in the right direction. We're giving you a workout today with the microphone.
So first, on behalf of Georgetown, Mr. Chairman, let me thank you very much for being here. And let me commend you for taking such a bold step towards tax reform in the United States. You had mentioned that you're considering various alternatives in transition. And one issue that addresses is the concern that some importers have raised about the potential impacts on costs of imported goods. Another issue that's implicated by the transition rules is something that's raised by a very different constituency, one that doesn't worry about prices for people living in small towns in America, or but asset values from the perspective of the Wall Street. Yeah, no. This is sort of the Wall Street asset value perspective, and I wonder whether you think that transition relief can also sort of address concerns about changes in the value of dollar-denominated contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we are. Thank you. That is a great question. So as we've engaged the import community, recognizing that the export community and the domestic producers and all play also a big role in the economy. So we've asked them key questions. Tell us about your business model, your global supply chain, the length of those contracts and the denominations of them. Give us, to the degree you're comfortable, the model that you're using. Because as I've assured them, look, these are bold changes. We don't expect industries to change on a dime. A lot has been put into the business models. So we know where we are going and going to end up, and we're listening carefully to the transition to get there. Because again, I'm the more I learn about these models, these contracts, the supply chains, all this, the more confident I am that we can design this provision and the transition to be extremely pro-growth to the country, whether you are an exporter, or an importer, or just a domestic producer. Thank you. Final thought. Thank you very much. No, stay, John. Look, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. This won't come back again. The elements that propelled President Reagan's reform have recreated themselves. We have a public that has had it up to here. The code is too complex. It's unfair. It's costly. It's special breaks for a lot of people and headaches for average people. They're fed up, just as they were before President Reagan led this effort. The second element is that there are bold, terrific tax reform ideas. Back then it was Jack Kemp and Bill Bradley. Today we have fair tax, flat tax, ABC tax, the work that's been done by Alan on the cash flow consumption tax, Kevin and others, and many lawmakers. That's recreated themselves. And now the third element has emerged, which is a president willing to lead on tax reform and expend political capital to make it done. That's why I know this is difficult, but this is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to do this, and I'm absolutely convinced with a lot of hard work, focused this year, we can get this done. And we'd love to have your input as we do it. Thank you very much.